Hello, hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? That's what I'm talking about. We got a lively crowd tonight. Raise your hand in the air if you're an entrepreneur. That's what I'm talking about. All the serious entrepreneurs are here tonight. I think all the people that are not serious probably at the Drake concert, but we ain't worried about that tonight. Try to have fun here. That's right, we're talking about the entrepreneurs. Oh, you gotta go? No, stay right there. We got some great speakers lined up for you guys. Everybody, welcome to session 1 of the State 48 and BetMGM Entrepreneur Speaker Series presented by OGeez and also Drinking AZ. I'm glad you guys are here tonight. This is gonna be an exciting time. Now, this session is brought to you by Every Impression Counts. We are live from the Walter Studios here in downtown Phoenix. I was here last year. I love the setup. Oh, you remember it. That's what I'm talking about. We had a good time up here. Yeah, she was here, right. Well, I see a lot of familiar faces out here, too, and it's so great, too, because I've asked the people, have they seen their businesses grow since last year? And a lot of people said they have, and it was because of the Entrepreneur Series here, so I'm excited to see that. Now, tonight's session is called Vision to Venture, and we have 3 dynamic keynote speakers. I've been speaking with them before, and I can't wait for you guys to hear their stories tonight as we're getting along. Now, they're going to help you to take your idea for your vision for your business and bring it to reality. I know a lot of people have great ideas, but how do you get it on pen and paper? How do you get that vision right there? Now, everybody, before I get to that, we're going to get somebody up here that everybody knows and loves. I'm talking about the chairman of the board for the State 48 Foundation, Mr. Mike Spangenberg. Give a round of applause.
I don't know about everyone that loves me, but...
I do!
Was that you, Nick?
Yeah.
Thank you, bud.
I gotta go to the bathroom.
All right, so Alyssa told me 2 minutes max, so I'm going to try to be really quick. Mike Spangenberg, CEO, co-founder of State 48, the for-profit, and chairman of the board of State 48 Foundation. First of all, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to myself, to our team. If you don't know anything about State 48, we want to be known for so much more than selling t-shirts and hats, and that's why we started a nonprofit 3 years ago to help local entrepreneurs pursue their passion, and we want to just see others win, right? We started with $1,500, excuse me, we started with $1,500. We were slinging shirts out of a spare bedroom, and here we are 10 years later with 3 retail stores, about to be 4, an incredible team of 21, an incredible foundation. So again, if you're not familiar with State 48, we just genuinely want to see people win. We want to add value in your life, and this speaker series is seriously like the most fun event that we host, or I go to all year long, just to connect with like-minded people. That's what you need when you're starting your new venture or just wanting to learn more in business. So grateful for all you to be here. I will let all these amazing speakers share their stories, and hopefully you connect with your next best friend or your next best partner or learn something tonight. So thank you again for being here, and it means the world to us.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Now, if you guys look over to my left and your right, you probably saw this before you came in here today. Now, State 48 Foundation is bringing together all kind of community resources. So I'm going to start from my left to my right to talk about the resources we're bringing in to get those businesses off of the ground. First up is the Center for Entrepreneurial Innovation and Venture Cafe. They specialize in market research and validation, and they also have weekly gatherings as well. And then one of my favorites as well, last year I feel so bad because I said that I was going to go there, and it's been a year now, so I definitely need to get over there. But it's the Arizona SBDC. They do all things small business mentorship, so if you have an idea, or if you're in the middle of your business ideas right now, they can still help you out. And then lastly, here we go, Chicanos por la Casa, and they are CPLC Prestamos. They specialize in business empowerment. So I asked them before, I said, I'm gonna try to not butcher your guys' name, but I can't see if they're mad at me or not. Okay, she gave me a thumbs up. All right, we're good over there. All right, so we're gonna go. Now, who heard about that grant money that you could win? That's the thing I love about this. I remember being up here last year talking about you could win $25,000. This year, they doubled that, and that's what I was most excited about. $50,000 that they're giving out to small business owners. Now, if you do want to win some of that grant money, you got to do a couple of things. You have to make it to 3 out of the 4 speaker sessions. Now, this could be online as the people are doing it at home, or you could do it right here as you're doing. The second thing that you have to do too, you're going to get a post-session survey. You have to fill that out after each speaker series. And then if you do those 2 things, you'll get an application. Do you guys get that? I know, y'all here. Y'all like, yeah, we got it. We ready to go. Try to get that grant money. That's what I'm talking about. Now, before I introduce the first speaker, I want to let you know, I know a lot of people have questions for the speakers, but we're going to have a Q&A session after they speak. So if you do have some questions, just go ahead and write them down, and we'll make sure to get those answered for you. Now, talking about the speakers, our first one, last time I saw him was at the Billboard getting some Mexican food. So you need some Mexican food recommendations. You could go ahead and ask him. Mr. Lloyd Hopkins, now he's the executive director and founder of the $1 Million Teacher Project. Looking at over his career, he started out as a teaching assistant. He worked his way up. You're going to find out why he made the $1 Million Teacher Project. So going to give it up for him as he comes up to the stage, Mr. Lloyd Hopkins.
Mic check, mic check. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Entrepreneurs, what's up? Jay, man, don't be putting my business out there. Like my hangouts, people will know where to look for me, where to find me at. My name's Lloyd Hopkins. I'm the executive director and founder of $1 Million Teacher Project. I'm pleased and honored to be here speaking in front of you all tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't start by giving a round of applause to the State 48 team for putting this event together. I mean, it's really important to be in rooms where you can find inspiration, where you can find motivation, and where you can find information. You know, as you're starting your entrepreneurial journey or as you're on your entrepreneurial journey, the most important thing to remember that has served me well is that you're always a student. You never stop being a student. You never stop learning. And you got to be humble enough as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, to put yourself in environments to learn from others and to surround yourself by people that are smarter than you. You know, that's very important. Put your ego to the side. Because I know everybody in here is a genius, but there are other people that might be just a little more genius. So make some room for them. So today we're here to talk about how to turn your vision into a venture, which is a journey that I have walked. 2 years ago, after starting my organization, $1 Million Teacher Project, in 2016, and two years ago, I raised $600,000 in funds for my organization. After starting with $0 in the bank and not really understanding how I would attract donors, how I would generate revenue, and being slapped in the face by the fact that people don't care as much about teachers as we say we do, you know? When I launched this organization, I thought it was going to be a no-brainer. I'm like, I'm supporting teachers. Man, everybody's going to be lining up to help me support teachers. Was not the case. Was not the case. But as an entrepreneur, you want to create something where there is a need and where there is a gap. So that was an opportunity. So I start by sharing that about how much I was able to raise, just to give that business perspective that it's possible for you to execute what you're thinking about. But the other part that I want to share is that even as much of a highlight as that was, one of my greatest highlights was yesterday. Last night, I took my son's 22, my daughter's 17. I took them to the Drake concert. And they were able to hop in the mosh pit at the Drake concert, and me and my wife acted as like their Uber driver for the evening, which I wouldn't recommend. I wouldn't recommend. Like, my son's 22. I'm like, I'm not out here to be chauffeuring this kid around. I graduated from this. But the reason why I'm sharing that is because in this conversation about turning a vision to a venture, I want you to vision the whole picture. Don't just think about your business. Don't just think about how much money you're trying to make. Don't just think about what it's going to look like when you're up on stage and people are having you talk about how you overcame all these obstacles. Think about the whole picture. Think about how your family's involved in that. Think about your significant other, your loved one. Think about what that looks like. Think about that. Think about the whole picture. Because I'm from the frame of mind that work life and your personal life don't have to conflict. They don't have to battle each other. What my journey has been is about being able to make those things work together. What the entrepreneurial journey has blessed me with, more so than anything else, than being able to get up every day and do what I love every single day, it blessed me with time and availability for my kids. Because I really never missed much. For the past 13 years, I didn't have to miss much in my kids' life. I was there. I was able to be at the school performance, whatever they call those, and you hear your kids sing horribly for 2 hours. I was able to be there. I was able to be at soccer games. I was able to be that. And what I would always have to remind myself is that when I took this walk of faith to launch my own organization, a part of that was me buying my time back so I could be available, so I could be there. So a reminder to you all is that you're not creating these organizations, you're not creating these companies, you're not doing these things, creating these products to create a prison for yourself. You created them to buy you freedom, to hopefully create some solutions that are going to help people, but you didn't do it to create a prison for yourself. And there's going to be those days where you got to grind, you got to work hard, you got to put in 12 hours a day, but there's also going to be days that you need to listen to yourself, and you need to say, you know what, I'm not going into the office today, I'm going to walk my dog at the park. Whatever the case may be, take advantage of the fact that you've put yourself in that position to do that. Now, my entrepreneurial journey, I've had a series of low moments in my life. I grew up in an abusive household. My dad was a stern military man, and my mother and father split up when I was in 5th grade. To this day, when the fall comes, like it's about to come now, like I still feel like an eerie feeling because that's when my mom and dad split up and all of that kind of stuff, and I can still feel that. We relocated to Arizona. I remember in high school, I got cut from the basketball team every single year until my senior year of high school, where I learned that if you put the work in, you can achieve your goals because we are the sum of our experiences. But the low moment that put me on the path to launch $1 Million Teacher Project was I was fired from a job. I hadn't been unemployed since I was 16 years old. I had worked every day since I was 16 years old. And it was the lowest moment in my life. So I called my wife crying, I got fired. So me and my boss weren't seeing eye to eye. And typically when you're not seeing eye to eye with your boss, you're gonna wind up getting fired. So I got fired. I called her crying, and we had prepared for it, and she helped me sign up for my unemployment and all that kind of stuff. But it was a call that I made to my younger brother that really changed everything for me. So I called my younger brother, and I was like, man, I got fired from my job. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And he said some words that hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, great, you lost your job, now find your life. That's what I'm saying. A bar. And this is my younger brother. I'm like, where'd you get that from? And I was like, you're right. Because at that time I was chasing titles, I was chasing money, a whole bunch of things that don't really equate to happiness in life and you being a happy, healthy, whole person. So I went out on a journey to find my life. And that journey gave me a few mantras that I'm gonna share with y'all today, or this evening, that I hope helps you. So the first thing I did was I did stuff like this. I started inserting myself in rooms so I could learn. And if I liked being in that room, I would keep going back. So continue doing that. This is all a part of how you turn your vision into a venture and you actualize it in real time. So insert yourselves in rooms to learn, to pick up information. So I started just doing all kinds of things. I started scuba diving. I started doing all kinds of stuff. I'm a monster in that water now. I couldn't even swim at first, so it was amazing. And then I read a couple things that really informed a lot of my philosophies. So the first thing I read was a Fast Company article by Richard Branson, the Virgin Mobile guy. And in that article, he talked about he started every one of his companies from discontent as a customer. So I looked at, okay, what am I the most discontent about? What do I hate? What pisses me off the most? Originally, my first business I was going to launch was going to be a competitor to the organization that fired me. That's what I was going to do. But I was wise enough to understand that being pissed off in itself isn't enough reason to launch a business. Because launching a business is hard. And your anger is going to subside. And if you're not angry anymore, you're now looking at this business you tried to start that you're not even passionate about. So I was like, I can't do that. I threw that in the trash. So I was like, what am I really discontent about? And that led me to the education system. Because I think education is the great equalizer. If you're really trying to empower people, you got to give them the tools and the resources to create their own solutions and their own salvation. That happens on school classrooms. The other thing that I read was a book called Do You. In that book, it talked about, we all know what we want to do inside in our heart of hearts. We know what our true north is, but for whatever reason, we talk ourselves out of it. We're not smart enough, we're not fast enough, we don't have enough money, whatever the case may be. And what he talked about in that book was that instead of talking yourself out of that, you need to follow that. You need to listen to it. You need to lean into it. And focus on it relentlessly. And don't do anything else until you achieve it through a principle called singular focus. So I was like, okay, I'm discontent about education. What's my singular focus going to be? And for my time in the classroom, I realized that I'm a teacher fan. You know, I truly am. I believe teachers are the cornerstone to society. In the work of trying to improve education, there are a lot of programs that focus on kids and technology and all that kind of stuff, but there's really not enough work going on around teachers. We treat our teachers like they're an afterthought, and they're really the nucleus. They're the center. Everybody in it, raise their hands, who's been impacted by a quality teacher in your life in some shape, form, or fashion? So what I've realized is that we have to do work. So all of you that raised your hand, every kid following behind you has a great educator, but also the kids like me. Because I was a slip through the cracks kid. So I wasn't one of those kids that was smart enough to get a lot of attention. I wasn't good enough to get a lot of attention. I wasn't bad enough to get a lot of attention. So I often just kind of floated in the middle, right? And that puts you in a place of being invisible. Like, and think how shitty that feels, being invisible. So I wanted to create something for kids like me. So you're always, when that kid like me walks into that classroom, they're greeted by a teacher that has the capacity to say hello, to pay attention to them, to focus on their education as well. But I had to understand teachers were overwhelmed, and we needed to create solutions. I think it's possible to change the world. You just have to create the right solution. And what I unpacked was all the things that have changed the world in our lifetime. Because everybody thinks change is impossible in your lifetime. But that's not true. We've seen things like Uber that changed how we travel. We've seen Google. Google's a verb. If I say Google that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Google wasn't around when I was a kid. Facebook, it's changed how we socialize, Instagram. Social media has tricked us all into giving a shit about stuff we normally don't care about. I really don't care about what you ate for breakfast. I don't care. But I'm like on my feed looking and liking your picture, and it's disgusting. It's actually disgusting. But these are things that changed our life in our lifetime. And they all have 3 ingredients that are the same. So they're cost effective, they're easy access, and they're community driven. So what I understood, if I can apply those same principles to a nonprofit organization focused on teacher retention and recruitment, we then have the ability to change the system. So the first thing that you have to that I just want you to take away is that you have to listen to yourself, trust yourself. There's a thing that's speaking to everybody in here. Stop talking yourself out of it. Start leaning into it. Don't tell yourself that you have to be the smartest, fastest, richest, prettiest, whatever, flyest. You just have to figure out a realistic way to start. Put one foot in front of the other. And then the universe, God, wherever you sit spiritually, is going to find the way to put that other step in front of you. Start listening to yourself. And that conversation of you listening to yourself is a singular journey. That's not a conversation you have in a room full of people. You take yourself into a dark room, light a candle, put up some incense, whatever your journey is, and you have a conversation with yourself. And then when you emerge out of that room, you come out of that room with what your first step is going to be. That's all you got to focus on. Everything else will fall in your path to keep you on that journey. The second is the singular focus. Then once you start figuring out what that thing is, even though you may not have all the answers. Like when I first started, I just knew I wanted to impact education. I didn't necessarily know it would lead me to teachers. But my first step when I came out of that room was like, okay, I want to do something with education. And then I started to build the business model. Then I started to realize teachers needed more support. I'm a teacher fan. That's where the business model came. And then I started focusing on that relentlessly. That became my singular focus. And the third thing is believe whatever your solution is, whatever you're trying to do is possible. Like it's 100% possible. These other people that you've seen have been successful are not smarter than you. They're not better than you. They're not bigger than you. They're just like you. And if they can do the shit, you can do the shit. So remind yourself of that every single time. And then if you're at a point that you're wavering around what that journey is or your passion or your commitment to it, I would argue that you still haven't found the right dream yet. You haven't really found it yet. When you find it, you won't want to switch your path. You'll just want to go harder. Every time I was told no, the word no became a puzzle piece for me. The word no became not right now. I never took a no as a no. I then went back to the drawing board and tried to figure out how can I turn that no into a yes. That's what it looks like. It's not defeating. It can definitely be challenging and piss you off, but it's not defeating. It's motivating. So look for that thing that motivates you, that inspires you to keep pushing forward. And then keep putting yourself in rooms to be a student and to learn. When I created my business plan, I intentionally opened it up to scrutiny. I allowed people to poke it full of holes. Tell me why this isn't going to work. Because I embraced the word no. I wanted you to tell me, Lloyd, you're not going to be able to do all this for teachers. It's not going to create the change you're trying. All right, tell me that. Tell me why. And then I took it back into the lab and started generating solutions and answers and responses to that, all the way to the point that 2 years ago, I raised over $600,000 in investments for my organization. So what you're trying to do is possible. I hope the speakers here today pour into you, because we're all a community and we need your talent here in Phoenix, Arizona, and Arizona in general to help move this state forward, because we can accomplish mighty things together, and we need a community that's pushing forward. So I thank you all for allowing me some time here on the stage today. I appreciate you.
Some powerful words. One more time, Lloyd. Tell me what your brother told you when you lost your job. What did he say again?
He said, great, you lost your job, now find your life.
That says it right there. I think a lot of people have been in that position before. I remember reading that in the newspaper, and I was like, I hope he says it too, because it hit, boy, it hit. All right, give it up one more time for Mr. Lloyd Hopkins. He's been doing a great job up here. Okay, for our next speaker, I think a lot of you guys know him already if you're sports fans. I'm talking about Mr. Darren Rovell. He is the founder and CEO of KickStand Cocktails. Now, he currently works for the Action Network, but he previously worked for da-da-da. You know I was going to do it, man. I had to. For ESPN. But today, he is speaking to us as the CEO and founder of KickStand Cocktails. And I tried some of his drinks out there. Delicious. Try them when you have a chance. Everybody, Mr. Darren Rovell.
Wow, Lloyd, that was good. That was good. All right, so my dad was a very strange man. He is still a strange man, luckily. And I learned from him kind of through watching what he was doing, that it's better to be strange than normal. And so when I grew up, I would try to do things that other kids weren't doing. So in 5th grade, when we all collected stickers, I tried to hoard all of the fuzzy armadillos. So I got every fuzzy so people would say, and now that I look back on it, it seems a little bit serial killer-like. So people would be like, Darren, let me see what stickers you have. And I'm like, they're all fuzzy armadillos. But that was the thing that I would watch my dad be weird, and I was weird, and I loved it. It's the reason why I was the high school mascot. It was the reason I did a whole bunch of things, but I loved being different. So my dad had a degree in biophysics and biochemistry, something that clearly did not pass through to me. He would like be on the phone and be drawing molecules for fun. But he also had a marketing degree. And so he started a consultancy where all these medical companies had to hire him because the scientists didn't talk to the marketers because they spoke a different language and they had no one to synthesize it. So he basically had 7 guys who had PhDs and marketing degrees, and they had to hire him. And to me, he didn't overtly have a conversation with me, but I kind of watched that and was like, wow. And I learned the word niche, and I said, this is pretty damn cool. And so when it came time for a career, when I was 10 years old, I found out that I loved sports, but I was never going to be a pro athlete. And I knew that before you did. Every other kid at 10 was still going to be a pro athlete. I wasn't. I knew it. I sucked. Okay? And so for me, that gave me a jump, and I started to be a journalist, and I wrote Baseball Mania magazine, and I sold it for $1 over lunch. And so I started that. But then when I got closer, I said, well, I want to be in sports broadcasting, and I don't want to toil in the small markets. And so in order to do that, I have to do what my dad did, which was find a niche, which was the business of sports. And so everyone was covering the games, and at the time, no one was really covering the business side of sports. And I was able to go to Northwestern, have the only sports business radio show in the country, and then at 21, for my first job, 2 weeks after I graduated, I was on ESPN. And it was the craziest thing, because you have obviously your dreams, and then it's there. It's like, can I die? I mean, I guess I could die now. I'm 21, but I'm sitting on the SportsCenter set with Kenny Mayne. Like, this is stupid. I'm 21. This is so dumb. So So I had a great run at ESPN, 6 years, and then I went from being the geek at the sports network to the cool guy at the business network, and I went to CNBC and covered the Olympics for NBC and CNBC, and while I was doing this, I wrote a book on the history of Gatorade, and I got really excited about the supermarket in general. My wife drove my wife nuts. She's like, can we ever go to the supermarket and not spend 2 hours in here? Plus, the extra products that you buy that you try once and they suck and they throw it out, like that's like hundreds of dollars that we're spending on every new product that's going into the supermarket. So I just really over time started to get fascinated with products and stuff like that. And in 2014, when I was interviewing Kobe Bryant, he said to me, you know, you interview me once a year and you've interviewed me over the years and you're into business and I know you know a lot of people in the business world and I'm kind of in the twilight of my career and I'd love to do a business project. You want to do a business project together? And I said, yeah, let's do something. And I said, you know, I'm really into food and beverage, and I study this thing. I know my stuff. And he's like, well, what do you think we should invest in? And I go, and this it sounds so. Beef jerky is going crazy, okay? All right, and I like this brand Crave, and we should get in. Let me see what we could do. And it turned out that they said, yeah, Darren, we don't care about you, but Kobe, yeah, we'd like to have Kobe as investor. So it would be $8 million for the final 10%. It's gonna be our last raise, and then we're gonna try to sell. So went out to LA. Kobe's in the room. He's very impressive, a good friend, and obviously horrible that he's not with us. But his financial advisor vetoed it for some reason, and it sold 6 months. It sold 6 months later for $291 million, and he called me first, and he's like, "Yeah, do you see it sold?" I'm like, "What sold?" He's like, "The beef jerky company." I go, "Okay, what did it sell for?" He's like, "Well, I just figured it out. I'm making $23 million with the Lakers this year, and I would have made $23 million in 6 months." I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty bad." Yeah. So he said, "All right, I'll put $10 million into whatever you say next, and I won't bring a financial advisor." And I said, all right, I know what we're doing. We're gonna put money into Body Armor. It sucks right now. It's a horrible drink, but the guy who founded vitamin water. His name's Mike Rapoli, and you ride your jockeys, and this guy's my jockey. So Kobe put $6 million in. I put in slightly less. And Kobe turned $6 million into $444 million. So made more than his entire NBA career. And so then I said, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Let me start my own food and beverage VC on the side while I'm doing this journalism thing. And the truth is, I really loved it. Like, it was not, like Lloyd said, it was not about the money. I loved finding a company and then being like, wow, this is cool, I believe in it. And it did tie back to niches and difference, and like Body Armor had the coconut water that Gatorade didn't have. And so I started this food and beverage VC, and we invested, our second investment was in athletic non-alcoholic beer. I have never in my entire career had more doubters about an investment than non-alcoholic beer. I don't understand it. Do I like the taste of beer? Is it water, beer flavored water? What is it? It's not getting you drunk, right? No, it's non-alcoholic. So what's the point again? So, but this is something that I think you should come away with here, with thinking about how you think about things. Everyone had I was the third or fourth journalist on Twitter, and everyone was saying, well, why would I want to be on Twitter? It's only what people are eating. And people who had not been on Twitter were dismissing it, even though they didn't know what it was. It was cool to say, well, why would I want to do that? It's the same thing with non-alcoholic beer. So I say, open your eyes. And I opened my eyes, and I said, you know what? All these people are doubting. Is it true? Does it what? And I looked at the data, and I said, well, 8% of beer volume in Ireland is non-alcoholic beer. In Ireland? and 7% in Germany. In Germany, the Oktoberfest people? That doesn't make sense. So what it turned out to be is that we had shitty O'Douls, and they had 50 to 80 non-craft, non-alcoholic beers that actually tasted good. The barrier wasn't, I'm not getting drunk. The barrier was, I don't want to drink something that doesn't taste good. And so we put in money, and I think the beginning valuation was $12 million. And I do think in the next year they're going to sell for more than $1 billion. So proving that, just that's kind of a look around thing. So getting to my KickStand story, we had invested in a bunch of companies. I still have my journalism career. And I really had I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. What was it Elon Musk says that entrepreneurship is eating glass while staring into the abyss of death? It's good. I mean, by money, he's the most successful entrepreneur of all time, so we should probably listen to him. But there was something that happened. I was in Beauty in Essex, a bar in New York City that has a great cocktail list, and I had a cucumber jalapeno cocktail, and the first one was great, and the second one was horrible. So I went down to the bartender. I said, "Did you make both of these?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, the first one was good. The second one was so spicy." He's like, "Well, let me tell you something. You might not know this, but each jalapeno has a different spice level." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." I go, "So what do? Do you lick each one to make sure that..." No, because he's at one of the most successful bars. You're saying that I'm a great bartender and I'm going to be compromised every time I cut a jalapeno, and every woman wants a jalapeno in her margarita or somehow through TikTok her rosé. I don't get that. And that was my light, and that was my vision. I said, "Holy crap! How is it possible that everyone likes to get spicier right now? And every time you cut open a vegetable at a bar, even the greatest bartender, even you at home, can't guarantee me consistency." And so I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, but I said, you know what? We're getting spicier and spicier. If you look at our snacks, our chips, our chip aisle is like Taki, 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 Taki. It's in blue, it's in red, it's in flaming hot this, flaming hot that, flaming hot this. But the drinks are not there. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna start KickStand. And the thing that I wanted to do, and I think that is important to tell you about venture, when you go from vision to venture, there's literally 1,000 steps to execute. So for me, it's like, okay, I gotta find a flavor house, and I gotta sit with that flavor house, and I need to say, this is what I want. I want to be the first drink that has a spice legend on the back, okay? And I want the mild to be so mild that it's just like a little bit of a tongue tingle. That's it. And then I go to my investors and I present them with the mild, and they said, "You can't put this out. You said you were a spicy drink." And I'm like, yeah, but I know you have to start with the gateway one, and that becomes kind of like an issue. And then it's like, how do you achieve all these things? So then you have the product, and then it's like, okay, how do you now educate, right? So this is another issue. When you go to Whole Foods and you have one of those coconut waters in a can, you never go back to the coconut water category. So I have people, when I'm doing my first sampling, this is why you yourself have to do the job. Okay, in my first sampling, people are walking up to me like this, like I have a knife in my hand or something. And she's like, I tasted a Bloody Mary. It's still in my mouth from 9 years ago. I'm scared of spice, right? So I have to then earn them back, right? And it's not my fault. The Bloody Mary's not my fault. But that, and we have one of the highest try to buy ratios, but we gotta get people to try it, which is why then we say, okay, most of our marketing budget is sampling. But there's so many things along the way that you learn. I think Lloyd's most interesting thing was he wanted to hear no. The worst thing entrepreneurs do is surround themselves with yes people. When I'm scouting out companies and I go to the fancy food show in New York, I come away with sadness because there were so many people who pumped their 401ks and their bank accounts into like, how do you like my Bonani seeds? And I'm like, what's a Bonani? Like, and you're never gonna get beyond that, right? And like, someone from their family should have said, no one's ever had a Bonani! They had a banana! So the yes people are like the worst thing. You want to hear no. You want to hear, and you have to have, and that's the hardest thing. You have to have open. Well, I don't like this because, and you have to have the openness, and that's really the key for all of this. But so you have to learn what the business is, and you always have to know, you have to have that open mind to figure out what is this business. So 10% is making a good drink. 10%, 5 minutes. 10% is making a good drink. The rest is like finding out how to play the game. So like, there are some brands that are big brands that know that they're putting crap in the marketplace, but they're filling the shelf so you can't get there. That's, they pile it big, pile it high. They don't care if it sells, they keep you out. So you have to know like what are the rules. In alcohol, it's distributors. We have a great distributor here in Hensley. In other places, I've had to say, well, I'm a data guy. I want to see the data. Where's the data? And they give me something filled out in pencil. So like, you have to know. And then the other thing I think that I've learned too, the only thing I knew about before I started KickStand about firing was just hard knocks. Here's your playbook. Give me your playbook, son. Sorry. And it's like, when you hire a team and when things don't work out and things aren't going, one of the hardest things to do is have to fire a person. So hard. And you have to look them in the eye or look them into the Zoom, and when you realize that there's a family behind that and everything else, but you have to move. Like, entrepreneurship is so hard. And you have the money issues, the clock is always ticking, and then you have to make all these decisions. You have to make these decisions with marketing. You should always have to spend a little bit more than you're comfortable with on a couple partnerships. We're announcing a partnership tomorrow that's massive. It makes us look so much bigger than we are, but you have to do that. You have to do that, right? And so I've learned so much from being an entrepreneur myself. I've loved watching it from afar. It is amazing. It is like staring into the abyss of death and eating glass. But you have to pick yourself up you have to know what you're getting into. And at the end of the day, when you exit on some of these deals, like I've exited 3 or 4 deals and made a lot of money. And the crazy thing is that what you really remember and what you'll remember for the rest of your life is the journey, not the dollars. And I know it's cliche, but to see what you had to do. How bad am I at pitching a tent, to set up for tailgating? It is, I wish I had video. But all that stuff is great, and that's why we're all here, that we really love it. We know it's hard, and in the end, the win is not the exit, it's the amazing journey. So I hope you go from vision to venture, wherever stage you are. It's amazing, and thank you guys for having me. Cheers.
That looks good. It looks real good there. So what I took away from that right there is finding your niche. We found out that Lloyd found his niche in education. We just found out Darren found his in KickStand Cocktails. Our next speaker, he has a really good background that I like about it. You guys heard of OGeez before? All right, well, that's the man that's coming up here right now. We're talking about Mr. Bran Noonan. He is the CEO, and he's also the chief legal officer as well for his company. And he wanted me to mention it's a cannabis company as well, just in case you guys are interested in that. Right. That he brings a lot of industry experience as well. And if you have any legal questions for him, bring your checkbook with you, okay? All right, Mr. Bran Noonan, everybody.
Thanks, Ben. How are you guys? Hey, thank you all. Thank you. So, as the gentleman said, I'm a former lawyer. Yes, thank you. I practiced at a bunch of national large law firms for close to 20 years. I'm actually not like a natural entrepreneur at all by heart. In fact, being an entrepreneur scares the shit out of me. So, my story. I'm gonna during this talk, I'm gonna try to sprinkle some legal wisdom out there for you guys. But my story really actually kicks off and begins with my mother. I suppose all of our stories kind of kick off and begin with our mothers. But my story begins with her. She was the entrepreneur. She was the one who, she had more downs than ups over her life. In 2014, she was building commercial restaurant kitchens in Arizona. And the medical marijuana law passes, and she says to herself, maybe I can parlay some of my knowledge about building kitchens and create a manufacturing facility, an edibles manufacturer. She had been into cannabis historically. She was a big cannabis advocate going back to the 60s here in Arizona. She was a product of the countercultural movement, and she was part of the generation that looked to raise their consciousness. And she began running cannabis across the border. Didn't fully succeed at that business because she wound up getting in trouble with the law a few times. Was sentenced to 2 years in a prison in Mexico, and wound up serving 6 months there. It's cool unless you're her kid. But I wasn't born yet. But she didn't learn her lesson because she continued for a few years until I was born, and that's what got her on the straight and narrow. She got off that path, but once the medical marijuana laws pass and the whole nation begins to move in that direction slowly, she jumps in. Now, in 2014, we're still talking about the wild, wild west of cannabis. It's still wild, but it was really raw back then. And in those early days, nobody was thinking brand building. It was really just about providing medicine for patients. That was the real focus. And then in 2017, two things happened. She was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And I'm living out on the East Coast. I'm a lawyer. I'm just doing my thing. I'm not really focusing on her cannabis venture. And like I said, she had more downs than ups. So I was always like, what she's doing over there, I don't know. She's doing her cannabis thing. Last time I heard about her cannabis thing, it didn't go well. So I come out. I parachute in here. And the first lesson that I'm going to throw out here is you got to know who you're partnering with, right? She was in a relationship with a really bad partner. And being in a relationship with a bad partner is the equivalent of being in a bad marriage, but possibly worse to some degree. Because legally speaking, it can be very difficult to get divorced. Not to say it's easy to get divorced under the marital laws, but depending on how you structure your relationship legally, it can be very difficult. Now, she wanted to leave and start her own separate company. Now, when I came in, I asked her, hey, do you have an operating agreement? What's your operating agreement saying? Do you know whether you can go do this? What does it say about this? She had no idea. So I took a look at it, and I was like, your operating agreement prohibits you from competing, right? No, I didn't know that. Okay, well, that's not a good thing. And then I find out that she is actually using some of her current employees to help her start the competitive venture. Now, her partner doesn't know about it. Now, you have fiduciary obligations as a as a partner in a business. You can't harm your other partner. That's a no-no, right? And you can't use company resources to go start a competitive company against them. So that's a no-no. So I'm like, okay, we got a lot of no-nos going on right here. And then on top of it, I was like, your operating agreement doesn't allow you to withdraw as a partner. How are you going to get out of this? And if you don't have an operating agreement that says anything about this, then you got to go to the statute. And the statute, I read the statute here in Arizona. I'm like, the statute says you are not allowed to withdraw as a partner, and without the consent of the other partner. Have you ever asked the other partner? Now he was not these, let's just say the people who got into, some of the people who got into cannabis in the early days shouldn't have been in cannabis. So I had to negotiate a divorce, and it's not pretty. It was ugly. So lesson number one, you got to know who you're partnering with. When you were starting a business, the main things you need to do are actually prophylactic, preventative, risk management. You are not in litigation yet. You are not fighting for your company yet. You are trying to build it up and put it into a safe spot. You're supposed to structure it safely. You want to be compliant with laws and stuff like that. So it's important that you have what are your corporate governing documents? Do you have them? Have you thought them through? Who are these people you're partnering? What are your out strategies? Do you have these things in place, right? Because you do not want to be caught in a situation where you have conflict like this. It's very dirty, and it can sink your business, right? It can really ruin things. Because when we divorced, we had to leave everything behind. We had to leave all her IP behind. We had to leave all her money behind because she needed to get out of the relationship at the end of the day, and she needed to start fresh. Now, she had the grit and the gusto to go start, and she had the ideas because that's who she was. The other person was more silent in that regard. And so she did it. We got her out. And she went into remission. And so, I flew back to New York. I was like, I'm done with this cannabis thing. This sounds crazy. I have nothing to do with it anymore. And so, so she starts this company, a new company. And in 2018, she kicks off a new confection, gives it a catchy name called OGeez. Again, nobody's thinking brand. Nobody's thinking, building an identity behind something. It was just putting another delivery device into the market. Confection had become a kind of a popular delivery device. You had baked goods and stuff like that as well, and tinctures and other things. But it was very small batch. There was no marketing budget. Her revenue was low. The medical state here, the real money comes when a state turns into a recreational state at the end of the day. And so, this was a strong medical state at the end of the day. But the revenue was low. But something starts happening. She starts pushing, trying to get the OGeez gummies into the dispensaries, and organically they become popular. Again, I'm not focusing on anything. I'm not thinking about it. She keeps telling me the OGeez are popular. I'm like, yeah, sure. Unfortunately, the leukemia comes back. And in March of 2021, she succumbs to the disease. And she asks me whether I'd come and run the company. Now, I've got a life out east, and I'm a practicing lawyer, but COVID has taught me that I can do things remotely. And maybe I was like, well, maybe I can do my legal practice and run this company remotely, and let's give that a shot. It can't be that hard. It's just making gummies. And they apparently sell themselves, and everybody likes to get high, so that sounds fun. So I jump in, and my mother was great at the idea. She was great at hustling. She was not an ops person. She didn't know how to scale. And so when I came on board, I was like, holy shit, this ship is sinking. It was a mess. And so let's talk about a couple things. So I had to almost reverse engineer and start the company anew. So my experience almost here is taking what was existing and going, okay, we have a lot to do here. So let's talk about one thing, the first legal topic, well, I guess the second one. The first one was watch who you're partnering with. The second one is corporate structuring / taxation issues, right? What is the corporate structure of your company going to be? You got to make that decision out of the gate. Are you going to be a sole proprietor? Are you going to be an LLC? Are you going to be a C Corp? Are you going to be an S Corp? What are the benefits, the pros and cons of each? They all have them, right? Most people like LLCs for a lot of different reasons. They're good for small partnerships. They're good if you're, from a taxation standpoint, it's just a pass-through entity. It doesn't have the formalities of a traditional C Corp, and that's what we were. We were an LLC. And that was fine. It's okay to be an LLC. We were an LLC, and that's fine. But in cannabis, it's got some problems. See, in cannabis, we can't take ordinary business expenses as a tax deduction like every healthy business gets to do. So we pay our taxes on our gross profit, not our net profit. It's really quite an unfortunate thing. But my mother hadn't been doing that, which many people don't think about, unfortunately. And because LLCs are pass-through, the owners can get audited and it comes out of their pocket. So I was like, this is not going to go well. And now I'm the owner, and I don't want to be subject to that. So I made an immediate decision to convert the LLC into C Corp taxation. So you can still stay an LLC and allow yourself to be taxed as a C Corp. The benefit to that is I stopped myself from being a pass-through entity. And the corporation now pays the taxes. Under an LLC, the LLC doesn't pay the tax. They report taxes, but you pay the tax. So I made that modification, right? So it was a liability protector. If any of the ownership ever got audited, the company would be the stopgap. But I also lowered my tax rate. I got corporation tax rate. Now, is that good or bad? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do when are you giving out distributions? Are you giving out essentially dividends? Because you have to have when you have a C Corp, you want to pay double tax. The company pays tax, and then if you give out money to your ownership, they have to pay tax as a capital gains, right? That doesn't happen the same for LLCs. So I had to make a decision. What's in the best interest for the company? We were looking to grow and expand. We were reinvesting anyway. We weren't giving money to any of the ownership. And I wanted to have a lower tax rate because I was already being punished by the IRS because we were cannabis. And I wanted a liability shield against the company in case of any audit, right? So lesson one always is when you're starting a company, how do you want to structure yourself? Who do you want to be? What is the benefits of both? You got to make that decision. And then you got to figure out what are the governing documents you want to put in place. Again, that goes back to who's in control, who has the power to make decisions. You got to have those things in place. How are you going to separate if there's ever an instance where you are not feel like you should be together anymore? You have to put those in writing. I do not encourage LegalZoom as a route for your governing documents. I have dealt with many situations where I have had partnership disputes with LegalZoom documents. They do not solve problems. They create more problems than they solve. All right, so category number 2. Let's talk about IP, right? So in taking over the company, I was like, all right, we've got this great name, OGeez. I wonder if my mom ever actually looked up and thought if anybody else was using the name anywhere. And I was like, because if I'm going to start investing money and time and building up and continuing to build up the goodwill of a name, let's make sure nobody else is using it somewhere and then I'm going to get a cease and desist and this whole thing's going to come crumbling down. So the first, how do you do that? You got to do that, right? You got to make sure if you're going to pick a name that you pick a name that nobody's using in the same classification and category as you. So you start off by going to the U.S. Patent and Trademark website. You can just type in any name. So I typed in a name or two, and I found that there was a company based in China. They didn't spell it the same. They spelled it OGeez. And so, but it had an auditory. It was an auditory similarity, right? We're talking about trademark. Trademark is the name. It's different than copyright. The name of the brand, the company. The issue with trademark is the law is protecting against consumer confusion, right? So you can't have names that are similar and selling similar products, right? Because if you have two companies named Nike selling shoes, the customer is going to be confused, and the real Nike is not going to be happy about it. Well, they were only selling clothing, and so that was okay. Their classification was clothing, so they weren't in the cannabis, so I felt okay with that. But then I found a company, so then the best place to go next is Google. Just Google your names, and you go deep into Google and find, and then look and look and look. So I found that there was a company in California, and they had a vape pen. a cannabis THC vape pen, and one of their vape pens was called OGeez. I was like, well, that's a little more problematic because they're in the category, the industry I'm in. Now now we're subcategorically different, right? On gummies, they're vapes, so I'm like, I can have an argument with them if I ever got to a fight. So I dug deeper. I went and looked up their public records to find out, because they had registered their trademark in California, right? We can't register trademarks under any, federally, because it's against the law. And so there's no such thing as a federal cannabis classification. But in California they allow it, so they had a California registration. And so, but I looked deeper and deeper, and I found out that they had dissolved as a company. I was like, yes, they're gone, they're dead. Then I was like, but maybe they sold the company and the trademark to somebody else, but no trace of it, right? And the issue was, I had learned that they had launched their name before me, right? So first in time is the real issue. Who came out? Who was the first to get out there? So and started using it first. So they were gone. So I was like, all right, it's good. So then I decided, after speaking to a lawyer, because I'm no longer really a lawyer, that I can register my trademark still, but I can't. I can bookmark it. So I registered under cannabis education, right? That's what we're doing right now. I'm educating you about cannabis. So I'm actually fulfilling my trademark's requirements by talking about this. And so we registered a trademark. So I got that all cleaned up, right? I got my trademark and stuff like that. Now I was looking at my copyright stuff, and I was like, who owns all of our content, our photography, our designs, our website? And I found out that our website was it was in the account of an employee, and he had all of the passcodes, and it was under his name. I was like, we got to get that from you. That is not yours. And of course, he said, pay me for them. And I was like, oh, this is going to not go well for you. But we worked that out. So I got that, and then but when you're dealing with stuff like this, you got to make sure you have agreements, right? If you are hiring a vendor, you want to have essentially what amounts to what we call a work for hire agreement, where it says anything that they do is yours, right? We see disputes all the time because people who are independent contractors out there who do creative, sometimes they think what they do is still theirs, and they'll fight for it sometimes, right? I've seen it. So you need to make sure if you are going to seek creative in some sort, that you can own all of the copyright on it, and then you need to have a written document that spells that out, because if you don't, there's an argument that you do not own it. Now, if you have employees who do all of the work, who do your work for you, that by law is going to be your work product. It's the company. Employees' work product is always the company. So that's a slight distinction between an independent contractor and an employee's work product. And there's patents. That's another IP category, but I'm not going to get into that. It's too, patents. Trade secrets, though, is an important one, right? A lot of times we create stuff that needs to be protected. And internally, we're creating a lot of stuff. We had a formula for our gummy. And so I was like, okay, I need to make sure that this trade secret is maintained. So one of the main things we do when we want to protect trade secrets is, we want to keep it a secret, which means we need to protect it. We need to communicate that internally. We need to treat it as if it's a secret. Because if you do not treat it like it's a secret by law, the law will say then you didn't act like it's a secret, then it's not a secret. Then people can do with it what they want. The employees can maybe tell other people about it. You didn't treat it as a secret. So you need to have policies and procedures that maintain and view it as a secret. On that note, you should have generally confidentiality agreements with your staff, right? If you have trade secrets, you want to impose confidentiality on your staff internally or on vendors who you share information with that is sensitive. So these are just basic documents that are protecting you, right? This is all, again, preventative, type of preemptive. You are looking to protect yourself from future risk. It's all risk management. So I called all the employees in and said, you're all signing in a confidentiality agreement, guys. Which actually brings me to category 3 I'll talk about, which is essentially employee relations, right? When you're starting a company, you're going to be, the companies aren't these things. Human beings make the company. And so you have to start thinking about how am I going to set my employee relations and how am I going to set up and relate to these people? What are my policies and practices going to be? Who am I going to be? What are my recruitment strategy, my retention strategies, and how am I going to? What kind of environment am I going to create? What is my comp structure is going to be? What are my bonus structures going to be? What are my am I giving equity out? How am I deciding to do that? How are these things all put in place? Because am I giving a lot of benefits? Can I afford benefits? And all of this stuff has legal components, right? Under the law, there's federal law, state law. A lot of times there's local laws. There's 3 layers of law that sometimes can impact employee relations. One of the first areas you might think about is, do I have employment contracts? Do I have offer letters? Am I spelling out the terms of the employment? Am I giving people notice? These are important just from basic best practices or from the idea of just, setting expectations and people seeing the professionalism of the company. They want to see that kind of stuff. One of the big things we always talk about is restrictive covenants, right? Non-competes, non-solicitation, again, the confidentiality. How am I protecting myself from unfair competition? Somebody leaving and competing against me? What are the rules associated? Because I don't know if you know, but non-competes are highly scrutinized in our of late. It's trending to prohibit them, right? So where are the protections available? So there was nothing like this when I got on board, right? There was no employment agreements. There was no employee handbooks, which is now a critical component of establishing good employee relations, setting forth anti-discrimination policies, anti-harassment policies, anti-retaliation. Are you training your employees? Are there rules? A lot of states now require anti-discrimination training. And even if they don't require it, should I be doing it? Is that a best practice? Other types of things to think about. What are pay practices? Am I paying people off the books or on the books? It's better to pay them on the books. And when I came on board, there were people paid off their books. There were people who were people being paid 1099 who were actually employees. And these things can come back and bite you when you get an audit from the Department of Labor or workers' compensation. Or because if you've got somebody who is being treated off the books and they get and as a 1099, when they're really an employee and they get hurt on the job, oh no, I now have to pay all their medical bills because workers' comp's like, sorry, it's not on me, it's on you. So there's so much risk that you have to do properly. And I've seen it all too often. People cut the corners because it costs a lot of money. It costs money to pay on the books. It costs money to pay all these extra, taxes and contributions to unemployment and stuff like that. Building a business is already costly. And I'm telling you this from seeing it for years as a lawyer, it's better to be compliant because you don't want to be looking behind your back thinking, because it can take you down and it can really come back and sting you. I don't know is that you waving at me? Yeah, because I'm blind. I think that was you waving, right? Yes. Yeah. Am I done? I don't know.
2 minutes.
2 minutes? 2 minutes. All right. Well. I could keep going on about the pros and cons of all this stuff, but in the end, I left my law job about a month ago. I stood in both worlds, thank you, I appreciate it. I figured I might as well join my employees in this crazy endeavor of cannabis. They were all in, and I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But I feel free not being a practicing lawyer anymore, and just being a part of this. And I had to restructure the company as part of being an LLC. I established a parent C corp. with a bunch of LLCs because we're expanding into all these states over the next 6 months. And, you know, at the end of the day, that was my mother's dream. She really did want to expand. She believed in the cannabis. She believed in the company, and her dream was to expand it into multiple states. And so, you know, I'm thrilled to be able to do that for her. So anyway, thank you all.
Has to be a great feeling, making mom proud there. One of the biggest things I took away from that one, being compliant. Being a former lawyer, you could get bit back in the butt. Short-term gain causes long-term pain. So make sure you're compliant about that there. All right, thank you, everybody. That was that section of it. We're going to move to the Q&A section right now, so you get to ask some of these entrepreneurs some questions. So as they're coming up, we have a few moments right now. Since this is a networking event, I want you to stay in your seat, but introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know right now. Since we got a few moments, just shake their hand, maybe get a business card or something. That's what it's all about. Everybody, that was a test. Nobody came up to ask me. Okay? I'm just messing around. All right, we're going to bring our speakers up right now. Hopefully you guys got those business cards. So Darren, Bran, and Lloyd, if you could make it up to the stage.
All right, everyone. We're moving into the questions portion here, so if everyone just sit back down. So if anyone has any questions here for any of our speakers, if you can just raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and run the mics around to you and take turns taking questions from both the in-person audience and the virtual audience. So do you have any initial questions here?
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go, Lloyd.
Hi. This question is actually for, get my notes. Our lawyer, for Brian. Oh, for Bran, sorry. Okay. So when you talked about the make sure you own whatever, if you have an IP and you have employees, does it matter if they're a W-2 or 1099?
Yes. Does owning the work product of a 1099 is essentially a vendor, right? A 1099 is going to be what is amounts to independent consultant, independent contractor. But here's the wrinkle. I don't know, without knowing more, there's an issue in the law called misclassification of employees, right? So many people think they're actually 1099 workers when they're technically should be classified as employees. So if you're hiring like an agency, like a company, an LLC, who's actually, that's different. But if you're hiring an individual and they say, I'm a 1099 worker, you might have some gray area there.
A lot of it has to do with what you're giving them, if it's a typical relationship or not, right? If you're giving benefits, right? So it's 1099. If you're not giving benefits, they're typical consultants. And usually, if you're giving benefits and they're acting as employees, then you're probably in
even if you're not giving benefits. My whole thing, I'd say, does a person look, smell, taste, act, walk, talk like an employee? Like, did you give them an email address? Are they working from your facility? Do you give them the business equipment to do their work? Do they report to somebody? Are they subject to discipline? It's a common sense equation, but so many times do people want to ignore their common sense.
Just some quick housekeeping. Everybody, if you do need to use the restroom, please go to the back so we don't disturb the Q&A portion. Who else has a question? Ooh, a lot.
Hi. This question is for Lloyd. So my name is Veronica Aguilar. First of all, thank you for all that you do. I'm a former teacher here in Phoenix, so thank you. Fun fact in here, I actually saw 2 of my former students' mother here who's starting a business. I don't know if she's still in here, Miss Murphy. There she is. Stand up, Miss Murphy. You stand up, girl. Yes. I haven't seen her in 10 years. This is a very special moment. But Lloyd, out of curiosity, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs that have ventures that are impacted by statewide or federal red tape, including policies? I currently work for Teach for America, so we're navigating all the things with teacher recruitment and retention.
Yeah, I'm excited about this answer. Get creative. Think outside of the box. Try to figure out there's more than one way to skin a cat. When they close a door, open a window. That whole process of me figuring out how to embrace the word no was also about me exploring how to connect with the dollars that I needed, you know, and being open to trying different approaches. You know, like I may try to approach somebody to become a sponsor, and then sponsorship doesn't work, and then I go back to the drawing board and figure out another way. You know, figure out if they got a grant cycle. You know, so I would really encourage to get creative, focus on relationship building. Relationships are key in everything that we do. You know, and really try to figure out. What's at the core and where's the intersection between who your potential partners would be that might lend itself to them being able to invest in the work that you're doing, right? Outside of just those traditional means of attracting dollars. So my best advice is get creative, figure out how to build relationships with those people that you're looking to get dollars from, and explore all the different ways that you can work with them from a funding aspect. You know, it may be you leveraging things that you get in kind. It could be different things. It might be a no, what turns into a no today could be a yes tomorrow, you know. So I think creativity is key and really just exploring as many different avenues as you can with a potential partner as possible.
My question is for Darren, and this isn't exactly an entrepreneur question, but it will keep me up at night, so I have to know. Was Kobe still with us when when his $6 million investment into Body Armor turned into what it did? Like, did he know what happened?
What did you say if Kobe, what did you say?
With Body Armor, like, was he still with us to cash out?
Yeah, I mean, Vanessa got all that money.
So he didn't know that it, like, took off?
He did know that it took off. We cashed out. He did not cash out that money. So he passed away, and then Body Armor sold. So, but he saw the rise. He saw the rise, and he would, you know, again, like when he invested in 2014, it was not really that great tasting of a product. He understood the jockey idea with Mike Rapoli, and he definitely saw the rise. So Dr. Pepper invested, I think, in 2018, so that was a big one. And then Coke bought a piece of it, and then Coke bought the entire thing for $8 billion. So he saw it, but not ultimately, and that was, you know, horrible because we promised we were going to drink fine wine, and we didn't get to do it. So. But what's crazy about Kobe is, and this is really true, he would have been a better business person than basketball player. He did not go to sleep. He loved walking into a meeting. So like Magic Johnson, I've been in a meeting with Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson would like to walk into the meeting and he would shake hands and he knew who he was and he thought it was cool to walk into a business meeting. Kobe thought it was cool to ask a question that these guys would be floored about, right? Like, how the hell does Kobe Bryant know that? Like, he was reading Harvard Business School case studies and stuff like that just to, be better. So, yeah, we didn't ultimately get to celebrate, which sucks.
Good evening, gentlemen. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, sweet. Okay, so my name's Derek Johnson. One of the biggest things that I wanted to ask all three of you, when I look at the title of Vision to Venture, the bridge between those two happens to be with experience and education, which is a commonality between all three of you. One of the biggest questions I want to ask is, when did you make that switch from being the entrepreneur to the leader of people? And what did that feel like, trusting the employees with your vision?
Good Lord. Am I a leader of people? I don't know. I'm just a crazy guy who believes that it's possible to change the world. For me, even coming into launching $1 Million Teacher Project, I was very aware of the term founder syndrome, right? And founder syndrome is when a person launches an entity and then they can't let it go. And they don't let other leadership come in, and at a certain point, ideas get stagnant, and then the organization ceases to innovate and become better and improve and create new solutions. So I've always been acutely aware of that. And so coming into the launch of this organization, my idea was that I'm not going to run it forever. So my job is to get it to the point where it's sustainable, where it can be scaled, where it can be replicated, and then hire my successor, and then move on to build something else. And then also what I know about myself through this journey, which has been so self-reflective, is that I'm a builder. Like, I enjoy building stuff. I'm not necessarily into management of it after I build it. But there's somebody else that loves management, and they hate building it. So my job is to get it to that point and then hand it off to somebody that enjoys all the stuff that I hate.
Good answer. I think before you go in, you have to know what type of person you're going to be in terms of running an organization. Now, for me, I'm still a sports journalist. I run a food and beverage VC. I run my own memorabilia fund, and now I'm going to be the CEO of a canned cocktail company. So for me, it was, if I am going to get talent, I need to be realistic about how much I'm doing. And so that's why one of my first hires was a very senior person at Pepsi, because I needed a person who would be a great chief of staff, who would say, Darren is the CEO, but he's doing 6 hours today, and these are his 6 hours. And it enabled me to still be the CEO, still make the decisions, still make the right decisions, and to have credibility among my employees that I still was the CEO. What you can't have is, he's the CEO because he came up with the idea. You have to have credibility among the employees to say, he's the right CEO, and the way I'm the right CEO, even with my 3 other jobs, is I make decisions, and I've set up this structure so that I still make the important decisions, but what I'm doing is realistic. And that was the first thing I thought of, is like, the only way I can get talent as employees is if I can really be the CEO, and the only way I can be the CEO is if there's someone who's telling me when I need to be in the room and when I need to be out of the room.
Yes. I was a lawyer, so I was, being a lawyer, being a lawyer is kind of like a doctor to some degree, in the sense that at a firm, it's like a teaching hospital. Like, we have people work under us and so forth. And then I was also a teacher. I was at a law school. So I thought I was going into academia and all that jazz before all this thing happened. So when I took the company over, I had no idea how to technically run a company, other than being on the sidelines of advising a lot of companies. So I started doing a lot of reading. I read a ton of business books, and the thing that stuck out for me is I don't really know much about how to run a company, and that the people who I was hiring would know how to run, ideally, their areas of the business. And so I started thinking to myself, I got really attracted to there was a management structure that was kind of kicked off at Intel 100 years ago by, I forget the guy's name off the top of my head, but it was objective and key results was OKRs is for short. And the idea is that everybody in the company sets their own objectives. And they're held to their standards and goals, and they're measurable. And you can, ideally, the idea is trying to measure success is trying to find quantifiable data to help them measure their success. And through that, I put that in place, and I took the view that the org chart should be flipped upside down, and the CEO should be on the bottom and not the top. And my goal is to facilitate everybody doing their job, because I don't know about production. I don't know what's going on. I don't run sales. I don't run marketing. I need these folks to tell me what they want to achieve, as long as they're in line with the guardrails that I throw up, the company goals, that is, the overall company goals. And if there's roadblocks in their way, how can I, as the CEO on the bottom of the org chart, help them achieve their own goals? And so I try to promote everybody owning their own business at the company, essentially owning their own roles and teaching people underneath them and working their way up. So that's kind of how I have taken it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Sorry. Yep, I'm a klutz. My name is Ashley, and this question is actually for all three of you. Do you think that the success of a small business requires to have investors? Do you think investors are required for the success of a small business?
If you're rich to start, no.
No, it does. Yeah, I mean, there's capital. You're going to have capital requirements at some level, depending on what you're doing. It's hard to answer that question in a total vacuum. But capital is capital, and you need working capital to get going. You need, before revenue starts coming in, you need. You're going to have to pay employees. You're going to have an office. So you're going to have expenses. So the question is, how are you going to pay for that now? And what do you try to achieve? If you were trying to, do you have a lot of capital expenditures? Do you have the money? So I think it goes back to your answer. Do you have money already? If you don't, and you have a lot of expenses, you're going to have to
I would say this, that one of the things that I've noticed with entrepreneurship is that you really can't waffle and not really have some sort of straight line trajectory. Because what happens is if you don't have that, then people are like, well, you had this idea, it wasn't executed, why wasn't it executed? And then you wind up on Shark Tank and be like, I had this idea in 2010, and all the sharks don't care because they're like, well, what happened since 2010? So without capital, without money, it makes it hard to kind of build up that rise that I think people expect.
Yeah, I mean, when we planned out our expansion, we had to look at a multi-year plan to understand what our capital needs were, to understand what kind of whether we could self-fund or we needed to do a raise. And so it has to be planned out, and you have to understand what your expenses are at every expense. I mean, we know every expense down to the penny of what goes into our products.
And in addition to what they're saying, I think it ultimately comes down to your goals, like how big you're trying to get. Like if this is just a side hustle you're doing, a passion project, or if you're actually trying to create a sustainable business that can scale. You know, each approach requires a different ecosystem around it. So it's figuring that out. You can certainly self-fund. You have to be, if you don't have investors, you got to be willing to be broke for up to 5 years, you know, which is how long it can take before you turn your company into revenue. And so you got to, if you don't have investors, you got to figure out how you can sustain up until that point. If you still got to eat, you know, if you're bootstrapping, and you figured out inexpensive ways to create your product or your service or deliver it, all those things play a part, you know.
It depends what sector you're in too.
Yeah.
Like can I self-fund myself into canned cocktails? Hell's no, you know. Not up against like Miller Coors and Anheuser-Busch InBev, so.
Well, thank you everybody for asking questions that were here. We're going to move on to our virtual questions that are being asked online right now. This question is for all three speakers. I see that it says, can any speaker share their aha moment when they felt they succeeded in their vision? We'll start with you, Bran.
I mean, my story again is a little bit different because I jumped on board. I can tell you that my mom, I remember her and her excitement when sales were going through the roof finally at this product, and I wasn't paying much attention because again I was like, all right, but I remember seeing that for her. I mean, you know, for me, coming into the company, cleaning the whole thing up, and then seeing it gain some traction, and seeing it in the market, you know, and the people experiencing it, that was a big moment. That, you know, the work that we had put in getting the ship righted had worked. So.
I think my life has been defined by like not allowing myself to enjoy the moment, which is kind of sad. But there is, you know, because it's always like on and on and on and grind and grind and grind. But the moment actually was here in Arizona. We were the sponsor of the Guy Fieri tailgate, which had 10,000 people here at the Super Bowl. The guys at Hensley, you know, helped us rush things out, and we sold 7,000 cans at $15 a piece, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like I know we're making this for 71 cents a can, and like this guy just forked over a Benny for 7 of them, right? So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, oh, you know, we made this thing for $3.58 or whatever, and he just put $100 down, and to me that was like, again, there's not a moment that. It's not like, but that moment was at least like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like this guy wants to drink it enough that he's paying $15 a can, and that felt really good.
Absolutely. So for me, it was, so the first grant that I ever got in 2016 was for $500 from a pitch competition. Yeah.
What competition?
It was a pitch competition through an organization. But again, you know, we can't do much with $500, but I took that $500 and invested it back into the organization because one of the first programs we did was taking teachers to lunch. So that $500 funded a couple lunches, right? And the whole organization was born. So that was the first one, and then in the year 2 of being in existence, I was able to start paying myself a little something. I was paying myself $1,000 a month. You know, that was an accomplishment, especially again coming from $0. But like I mentioned earlier in my talk, it was 2 years ago when we hit 5 years, and I said this a moment ago. You got to be prepared to be broke for like 5 years. And when my organization turned 5. we got a $540,000 grant from the Department of Education. Like that was, and I was at burnout. Like I was right there. I was about to go get a job at Walmart or somewhere, you know, like I was right there. And then that investment came in. So that was a huge validation for me.
That's also the thing here. It's like, how many times you got to pull yourself up? If you guys haven't read the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, you know, it's a surprising book because you think that the guy who founded Nike is gonna write a book about, oh, Michael Jordan and all this, and like there's almost no Michael Jordan. It's like half the book is about just how close they almost died. You know, now we have this $80 billion annual brand, and you know, I'm not gonna ruin it. Just read it.
It's a great book. It's a great book. I love it. It's one of my. I love the fact that he hated the name Nike, though. He didn't want to call it Nike.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's give our speakers a round of applause for tonight. So just to let everybody know too, make sure since you came here tonight, you guys only have to go to 2 more sessions to be eligible for the $50,000 grant. And then also after this, you're gonna have to fill out a survey as well. So you'll get that through your emails as well. Thank you everybody for coming. Also, I wanna mention as well, if you go outside, I believe it's at the State 48 Foundation table over there, there's a QR code over there. If you donate to that, that's what helps keep these events free. So I know everybody loves coming to these events, listening to these great speakers, and it'll be interesting to hear all of your aha moments too, just like hearing theirs. I always think about Mike telling me the way that they found out how to call it State 48. I believe somebody was in the shower or something and they ran out and they said, State 48, that's it. And they're like, okay, state and then 48? No, spell it all out. And now look at this now. So this could be you as well. So give everybody a round of applause. Thank you guys so much for coming. We'll see you next week, September 13th, same place and time.